Good morning, everyone. It's so nice to see you all here today for day 3 of the Digital Literacy Forum. And today we are concentrating on youth services. Before I start, I want to make sure that I thank everyone in my department for lifelong learning. Michelle Stricker, the supervisor, Deputy State Librarian for Lifelong Learning, Andrea Lewandowski, and I'm going to actually library consultant for small business development and technology, and Mimi Lee, who is the director of literacy and learning. We couldn't have done this without everybody's help, and I just have to say thank you for supporting me, for all of us, I think, really working so well together. I also want to thank State Librarian Jen Nelson for her enthusiastic support and her great words on the first morning. I also especially want to thank you, Andrea, for sort of being the one who's sort of holding us all together and lending your technical support and really recording things and making sure we're all, things are working great during the day. So thank you so much. And I am going to just share my screen if I can. Hopefully you can all see that. So I do want to say that this is the third day of a 4-day forum. And if you missed day 1 and day 2, which were wonderful, they have been recorded, and you can certainly go to the website and find the recordings as well as the PowerPoints. So we're in day 3, and then there's one more day tomorrow with our boss, Michelle Stricker, on health literacy and telehealth. And the agenda today is very short and sweet. Welcome introductions. There'll be a keynote, the panel discussion, and then a Q&A. And I want to emphasize that this forum is really designed to be sort of a roundtable discussion. We'll have a keynote, and then we'll have the panelists talking about certain topics and answering questions. But we do want all of you to share your thoughts and your ideas. If you have questions, you can either use the Q&A or you can type in the chat. We'll be monitoring both. And I want to also, before we even get started, I want to thank the panelists. I want to thank all of you for lending your expertise to today's discussion. And these are our panelists. So you will be, I'm going to introduce them now. Just Ellen Pozzi is the Associate Professor and Director of the School Media Program at William Paterson University. She'll be doing our keynote. She'll also be one of the panelists for the discussion, along with Alia Shields, who is the Youth Services Librarian at Cherry Hill Public Library. She holds an LIS from Florida State University and worked in libraries in Virginia and Philadelphia before joining the Cherry Hill Public Library, and served on ALSC's Great Websites Committee and chaired its transition to the Notable Children's Digital Media List. In addition to digital literacy, she's passionate about storytime and picture books and is excited to be a member of the 2023 Caldecott Committee. And Marissa has been the Teen Services Librarian at the Princeton Public Library since 2019. She graduated from Rutgers in 2018 with an MI in a concentration in school libraries, and she's worked in a variety of library settings, including the Kotzen, I can never say the Kotzen Children's Library at Princeton University, which is a great library, and kindergarten through grade 5 school library. After being diagnosed with dyslexia in 1st grade, she didn't learn to read till she was about 12. So creating a space for children and teens who may not feel there's a space for them in the library is one of her biggest goals. And outside of the work, Marissa loves spending time with her rescue dog, Mandu. And Marissa Brinn is a teen librarian, also at Cherry Hill Public Library, and an adjunct instructor at Drexel's College of Computing and Informatics. Can't say that one either. She's worked in teen services for 10 years, developing dynamic teen programming, providing library use instruction and reader's advisory to all patrons, and managing the young adult collection. Professional research interests include critical librarianship, multiple literacies, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. She lives with her family in Cherry Hill. So thank you all so much for being a part of this event. Oops, I don't really need to go to that quite yet. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I want to thank all of you for coming, and I want to say, of course, primarily as youth services staff who work with youth of all ages, we all know how vital that youth master digital literacy skills so that they can effectively navigate all aspects of their lives. We've seen how this has played out over the past years during the pandemic. We're here today to share and discuss more about digital literacy, how libraries serving the digital literacy needs of youth in our communities, and suggest more ideas using digital literacy to help them going forward. And I want to thank all the speakers for taking time out today to talk with us about this. And as I said before, for any of you in attendance, please feel free to make any comments during in the chat or in the Q&A. Especially if it's about the speaker, we'll try to answer those questions after Dr. Ellen Pozzi goes. But we'll also try to answer some of them, during the time that they're speaking, especially during the panelists. So without further ado, I am going to introduce Dr. Ellen Pozzi. She is the Associate Professor and Director of the School Library Media Program at William Paterson University. She was also a Youth Services Librarian in Morris County and has served as the President of CSS and the Chair of the Garden State Children's Book Awards, and was a member of the 2020 Robert F. Seibert Award Committee. Take it away, Ellen.
Thank you, Sharon. I'm going to share my slides now. And start my timer so I don't go over time. And hello and welcome. I decided that I'll Google it is one of the terms that we hear most often. We use it ourselves, kids use it, but it needs some unpacking in terms of digital literacy. So that's why I wanted to use it and start from there in understanding digital natives and digital literacy. I used the term, before I go on, I wanted to say I used the term digital natives because we all know what that means. It has a common meaning. However, it is a problematic term, and I want to acknowledge that. As a matter of fact, Sharon said somebody in a previous session had also indicated problems with the term. It's got colonialist overtones, and it's used as racial coding that results in the elimination of racialized people and their subsequent histories, physical territories, and futures from the very meaning that these metaphorical framework was derived from. It is matched with, by the person who started this, it was matched with the term digital immigrants. And then I've seen it extended to tribes within digital natives, which is just not the right way to go. So I am going to use born digital for the rest of this presentation. That has double connotations, meaning both, we're going to use it as what digital natives mean, but born digital also refers to print material or material that was born on the internet, that was always digital and has continued to be digital. So I want to use it in the sense of somebody who is familiar with digital material. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. So today I want to look at what is digital literacy. When I was first thinking about this, it really, I couldn't come up with a clear meaning in my head for digital literacy. So we're going to kind of explore digital literacy, talk about born digital youth, and what these things mean for libraries to launch us into our panel. So what is digital literacy? This was my very first question when we started talking about this, and I was having a real issue with wrapping my head around the term. And I think one of the first things we started talking about, what jumped into my head, was basically what we call information literacy. And what I was hearing from other people as we were talking about this was more technical literacy. And I was like, okay, so what is the definition of digital literacy? This sent me down a real rabbit hole. I looked all over for definitions, and starting with the ALA definition, which is digital literacy is the ability to use information and communication technologies. So that's the physical aspect of using computers and other technology to find, evaluate, create, and communicate information. So how, what, and where to search for information, evaluating it. Is it good information? Is it true? Creating and communicating, synthesizing this information that you find and putting it into new formats, then sharing that information. And it requires both cognitive and technical skills. And there's where the divide came in for me. I was thinking of digital literacy cognitive, and some of the discussion was going to digital literacy technical. So both of those meanings are incorporated within the digital literacy definition, as indicated by ALA's digital literacy task force. So I decided to look at what PLA says about digital literacy, as looking at library definitions. And PLA really focuses on the technical part. If you go to their digitallearn.org site, which is where they house their digital information, you can see that they're talking about primarily continuing education with hotspots and digital skills. So, as a matter of fact, they have this, and I have the link on the slides to this tech. Let me go back to my slides. This tech skills checklist that staff and supervisors in libraries can take. And this is an extensive checklist, many sections. And within this, only one of the checks are about the cognitive domain. So PLA is really focusing on the technical domain. Within one of the domains, they asked, are you comfortable evaluating online content for currency, accuracy, authority, and purpose? And that's their whole cognitive domain part. So PLA is focusing on the technical areas. So that some of their basic tech skills that they feature are getting started with email, navigating websites, operating search engines, mastering cybersecurity. Decided to go broader, IFLA, and see what the International Foundation of Library Association, International Federation of Libraries Association, I don't know what the abbreviation exactly is, but they are more expansive with digital literacy, and they talk about the ability to harness the potential of digital tools. Being digitally literate means one can use technology to its fullest effect, efficiently, effectively, and ethically to meet information needs in personal, civic, and professional lives. So when they talk about efficiently, it's technical. When they talk about effectively and ethically, that's more cognitive. Effectively can be both, but ethically is more cognitive. And you can see how they're really talking about I was just looking at the chat, talking about everyday lives. They don't include educational, but that's personal, really. When you're trying to succeed in education, you're meeting personal needs, civic needs being part of a democratic society, and professional lives being successful in work. They say digital literacy includes all of these skills: basic technical skills, knowledge of how the internet works, including ways in which data travels and may be used, cybersecurity issues and risks to privacy, and staying safe online. Also using technology creatively, blogging, writing code, podcasts, videos, legal, ethical knowledge and global citizenship, standards of behavior, human rights, moving beyond cultural and religious differences as we go across borders. And then media and information literacy skills. They also note, in conjunction with their idea that it goes across personal, professional, and civic, that this is lifelong learning. We have to keep learning about technology, about digital skills all through our lives. So this, in reading by Ng, who was writing back in a while ago, he came up with 3 buckets. We've talked about technical, which is operational literacy, and cognitive, which is information literacy, critical literacy. And information literacy is where I tend to go. Coming from a school library background, it's where I tend to go when we talk about digital literacy. All that it entails with evaluating material and knowing how to search for material and all of that goes with information. But the cognitive is also critical literacy and multi-literacies, including visual literacy, which is very important in a visual dimension like the internet, audio literacy, and spatial literacy. So there's various literacies involved in the cognitive bucket of digital literacy. And finally, they separate out, often it's talked about technically and cognitively. Ng separates out social emotional literacy and it puts under that bucket things like etiquette, safety, and privacy. And knowing how to handle the emotions that we've all seen in social media and how to work across social media takes a certain amount of social emotional learning and social emotional literacy, which if you've been on the internet at all, you know not every person on the internet has that, unfortunately. So there are many literacies that I found that are encompassed within and often conflated or used interchangeably with the term digital literacy. Things like computer literacy, which we would see as the technical part of digital literacy. Hyperliteracy, knowing how to navigate all of the different places, hyperlinks, which is still actually really a challenge for me because I'm a very linear reader. And so when it takes me off, I jump all over the place and like, oh, where did I start? So that's actually a very good skill to master. Internet literacy, knowing the interconnectedness of the internet and using the internet safely and responsibly, web literacy, media literacy, transmedia literacy, which we'll talk about. I think one of my panelists is going to talk a little bit about, so I don't want to say too much, but basically consumption of production, management, and consumption of digital interactive media. And of course, information literacy, the literacy associated with critical thinking and the ability to search, locate, and assess web-based information effectively. So on to Born Digital. Now that we've explored some of the meanings of the term digital literacy and how some of our library associations look at that term, let's talk about what it means for a young person to be considered born digital. Being born digital, they've grown up, most of the people that you are serving in youth services up through teens have grown up and spent their entire lives surrounded by computers, video games, cell phones, and other digital technologies. And I say many because one of the assumptions with being born digital is that everyone was born after a certain year has this access to all of these devices, even though it feels ubiquitous because we've seen even very young toddlers able to navigate iPads. I was on a plane pre-COVID, and a dad and his couldn't have been more, maybe a year old, was sitting there, and he turned on an iPad and gave it to him, and the kid was watching it. I don't know necessarily that they were navigating it, although they touched the screen, but we see the ubiquity of devices. But this idea of someone born digital who thinks differently because they're born digital and automatically comes with like a built-in chip and moves skillfully within networked environments really is a problematic assumption. It perpetuates the notion that because youth can navigate on phones and games and iPads and laptops, they know more than they do. We just assume that they know it all. And it doesn't mean that they're fully conversant with anything other than a narrow set of applications that they're using primarily for entertainment, which is not a bad thing. I'm all about entertainment. I wouldn't get through life if I didn't stop to check my Instagram feed and look at some dogs and goats and enjoy. And that's a good point, Sharon. They look at print and want it to be a touch screen. But these assumptions, but by what we see, lead us, we take the leap that students are therefore technically proficient using a range of technologies, and that they're not able necessarily to go beyond with what they're most familiar with. And they're not necessarily able to problem solve when they hit a stopping point. They tend to just, some are naturally curious and some are just stymied and frustrated when they hit a certain point. So being born digital does not mean that they don't have anything to learn from us either. Like we have, me who was born pre-computers, we have worked hard to earn our digital knowledge. And so we can teach them things, and we should teach them things. So what this leads to, these assumptions that we make, leads to certain realities, like students using Google as a database. Whenever they have a question, they start to do research, they want to find out something for their personal lives, they go to Google and they go to the Google first page. There's that first page phenomenon. If what I want isn't on the first page, I'm not going to go to the second page. And that's part of, they don't really understand the algorithms that are bringing information to the top of their the top of the first page. Sometimes they won't even go scroll down to the bottom of the first page. They don't understand the paid, that some of these are ads. They might not be savvy enough to understand that some of these are ads. They are certainly not savvy enough to understand that the algorithms also bring them things that they want to see. It learns based on what they've already used Google for and continues to bring them for things to see. They go to Wikipedia as a first, as the final place for information, rather than a first place to check, to kind of get an idea of a topic, and to plumb the resources of Wikipedia. Wikipedia has has many more. If you look up a topic that you are familiar with, or if you look up any topic, they'll often have footnotes, and these footnotes can take you to valuable other places and other information. But if you don't use Wikipedia that way, but just go to Wikipedia for your one and only answer, because it's you consider it a database with all the information that you could possibly need, then what both of these lead to is frustration. A researcher said that students know that they're not getting what they want from Google, but they don't know what else to do. So they go to Google, they don't find the answer, they go to Wikipedia, they find an answer, which may or may not be true. Wikipedia has really improved and has some locked pages and semi-locked pages. So the disinformation on Wikipedia is not as strong as it was, but even if you don't know about locked pages versus unlocked pages, and you don't go to those secondary resources, or actually primary resources that are in Wikipedia, then you're not using it well. So they also don't understand the idea of curation, databases being curated resources that are brought together with certain parameters, and they really don't understand that, and really don't see how to do research and how to do the searches. Searching is an issue too with students. Our born digital students can type in a question into Google as a full sentence, but to construct a really good query is really beyond them. They don't even know. Some of my students that I'm teaching in grad school don't even really know, many of them do, but some are surprised by putting quotes, that'll change your search, or using and or, and what Boolean searching. Not that we need to teach kids Boolean searching per se, but we need to teach them how to construct queries. The reality leads us to students not knowing how to use information, not knowing how to evaluate sites, not knowing how to do fact checking, lateral searching, not understanding deep fakes. Mesh is a new area here. It is the media literacy, ethics, sociology, and history, which provides students opportunities to learn how to sort through propaganda to find truth. And all of these things are things that we need. I've linked here to a fact-checking site. The News Literacy Project does a really nice job of having students. It's a nonpartisan national education nonprofit, and it helps teach, learn, and share the abilities needed to be critical consumers of information. That's what we're trying to teach our students to be, as or youth people, young people, youth people. Lateral searching, if you remember from evaluating, you're evaluating websites kind of information that you've learned, you probably learned CRAP or Radar or some of those, which tell you to look at the URL and look at the about and look at the authority. Those things are still important, but these 4 moves and a habit for web literacy fact checker are good to keep in mind. One of the most important is check for previous work that's out there, and then reading laterally. So there's this, and I didn't link to it, but there's this website about the Pacific Northwest tree octopus. If you've ever done evaluating websites, you probably have used the Pacific Northwest tree octopus. It's a really, it passes some of the tests, and I've given it to students as I'm teaching them evaluation, and especially undergrad students get caught up by looking at the website. They don't use their common sense, like, can octopi be in trees? And they don't search any other sites. They don't just do a web search on the Pacific Northwest tree octopus. And once you do that simple web search, many people have written about how the site is a hoax. So it's important to look at other fact check sites, read laterally, read other things about it, not all sources, the quality of the source, and check embedded web links, and then check your emotions. And I think that's really an interesting thing. And I am running out of time, so explore this. It's a fabulous site. And also in using information, we have to think about ethical use, teaching students plagiarism and copyright. And I hear copyright's about to change crazily. So they're going after Disney copyright, I read this morning, so it'd be interesting. But I've had students in college copy and paste from websites because they say it's on the web. You see Melissa shaking her head. It's on the web, so I must be able to use it, and I don't have to credit the web page that I got it off of. So we need to get that stopped early on. The realities of born digital also lead to digital inequities. When I say some people, there are, Born Digital assumes everybody has access to technology. And while most people have some sort of mobile device, I think the penetration of phones into youth is really high, very, very high. You can't do everything that you need to on a mobile device. You can't write a paper well on a mobile device. Databases are not all searchable on a mobile device. You might not, that might be your only device. So you're limited as to what you can use. Your internet connection at home might not be strong or there. You might not have multiple devices. This we found certainly in schools during COVID, where students were fighting, multiple students in one home didn't have the broadband to share, to all log in at once, and they didn't have multiple devices. And plus they don't have the time spent on anything but their mobile device in order to become more practiced and in even what they can do. So their practice time is limited, and their devices are limited, and their internet connection is limited. And so often they're behind then because they just don't have the access. And some places I read, they talked about digital, the problem with the term digital natives is it's also leading to a kind of digital elite, because there's this inequity in who can access things. So what does this mean for libraries and the young people that libraries serve? We have to choose which dimensions and understand which dimensions we're focusing on. So do we want to do the technical parts, or how do we want to do the technical parts? Public libraries excel at this. It's the PLA focus, as we saw. School libraries also teach this. The cognitive focus has been a major focus for school libraries. Information literacy is that's really a primary focus for school libraries. So how do public libraries want to focus on that? And then social emotional, do we want to dip into that, thinking about digital citizenship? It can be folded under the cognitive part, but maybe thinking about it separately as a social emotional part of digital literacy could lead to different thoughts about programming and different ways to address it. We need to assess the competence, kind of understand what being born digital has led us to assume, and what we might not, what they might not know. So thinking about what their computer skills are, who has those computer skills and what they have, how to do searching. We're taught how to search in order to help people. So let's pass that on. And even things like modeling, when you have a student, when I come from school library, I keep saying students, I mean youth, all young people. When you have a young person in front of you and you're helping them search for something, that's a time for teaching information literacy. You are modeling what you're doing. You can do a walkthrough to talk them through what you do. I know many of you probably already do that, but that's teaching, it's assessing their competencies, and it's teaching them also. To help them evaluating resources, what do they know about that? Misinformation, disinformation, huge right now. There's many great digital literacy programs that news site that I showed you really works on this, and there's many more resources for, and I think this is an easy program, and during the program you can assess where they're at. I mean, that can be part of the program. Where are you at, and how can we move you forward? Algorithms, helping students understand algorithms. We need to understand algorithms more ourselves. I forget about algorithms when I'm scrolling social media and getting, what do they call it? The bubble that you're in, that you, name escapes me, but you are getting reinforcement for the ideas that you have, because the algorithms keep feeding you more stuff that you're reading. So it needs to be top of mind. Again, critical critical consumers of information and digital citizenship. Where are your young people in all of these areas, and where do they need more competencies? And they're not going to admit it, so we have to be creative in how we go about finding out where they are at, because nobody's going to admit they don't know how to do this stuff. And finally, collaboration. I think this is really important, that public and school libraries collaborate together and reinforce each other, especially with what we're seeing in the school library world with no school libraries or librarians in a lot of schools, which just, I don't know how they can think that they're teaching students without school librarians. But what happens is when there's no school librarian, the public librarians may have more thrown on them and may need to do more work for those who do come in and look for help. And so be cognizant of what the situation is in your schools, know whether there's school librarians or not, and see if you can work with them, especially around elements of digital literacy. And school librarians are very strong on the cognitive and social emotional, so depend on them. You know, let's learn from each other. Public libraries are great on many things, and school librarians need to learn from them. I know from being a public librarian that it can be very difficult to make that connection. There's some places I've seen it work beautifully. There's some places where there's just no time to meet, but it's important, I think, when it comes to digital literacy. And also other organizations, there's other community organizations who can be involved and can work with you in presenting programs and helping your patrons become more digitally literate. And these are selected references from that I used in my running down the rabbit hole. And I will make this slide available to anybody who wants it, so that you can take the links off too. But I think you can also go back to the recording to find it. I haven't been, I'm done. I don't know if you want me to address what's in the chat.
There is a question, Ellen, in the Q&A. Nicole asked, do you think digital equity plays into our assumptions versus realities of born digitals? If so, how so?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what I was trying to say a little bit with, you know, the lack of broadband. I mean, talk about particularly in rural and like Native American, there's some statistics that was in one of the articles about how little connectedness there is in some areas of the country, particularly in marginalized populations. There's lack of that. And I think also, what I was reading is sometimes the digital inequity leads to different focus of digital literacy, because you need to catch some students up to even the born, like if you're using digital literacy more often, if you're using devices more often, then you're have some familiarity with, like I think this comment in the chat about games and swiping left and swiping right, and older games lacking resources. You know, there's just not the time spent on it. But we assume there's two different directions I saw this go in the research. One, we assume that everybody can do it. And two, when we find out they can't do it, then they have to spend time catching up that other students are spending time or patrons are spending time going forward. So there's this inequality in access and inequality in time spent and an inequality of the quality. I mean, if you think about, if you can't afford the newest iPhone or even the second or third or fourth newest iPhone, and you're using something old, you're not getting all the functionalities and learning the new things. You'll be great for getting those older programs to play because you'll understand it, but you won't understand the new ones. So, you know, it impacts. I'm sorry, I don't know if I quite answered that question, but yes, I do think digital equity is part of a problem with our assumptions.
Right, that's so true. And I'm just thinking as an adult who is trying my best, to be digitally literate. The fact that I think I heard somewhere that the phones, as of the end of June, really you need to have a 5G in order to really access things. My phone is a 4G. I am not ready to buy a new phone. So that means I'm going to be behind. So, as adults, we have the same issues, and I don't know if we can always rely on the teens to be the ones, to be in the forefront and to teach us.
No.
Because, yeah, it goes both ways. Thank you so much, Ellen. That was wonderful. You shared so much that digital literacy is such a huge topic. It can be overwhelming, but you really did a great job of kind of taking the essentials and sharing them. And since this is a youth focus, I'm so glad you brought, the teachers aspect and librarians aspect in, because that was the one thing we haven't really been mentioning in the other sessions, although there was a session about Department of Ed not really being able to help adults in their learning needs. And even though, some of them are starting from the basics and they do need help. But, the idea of the schools and the public libraries, they just work so closely together that we can't talk about this without talking about, the school aspect. So, thank you so much for that. So I'm going to start sharing my screen and we're going to go into the panel discussion. Lost it. So hopefully everyone can see that. So we are going to start, and feel free, any of you panelists, to jump in. But I think just going to start maybe with Alia asking, what do we mean by digital literacy skills, which Ellen, of course, did allude to quite a bit. But I think everyone does kind of have an idea themselves, or how they look at it might be a little different from other people. And what other programs can libraries do to assist youth to excel in becoming more competent in their digital literacy skills? So we'll start with you, Alia, and then anyone else, feel free to jump in.
So yeah, Ellen talked a little bit about ALA's definition of digital literacy, and I have always kind of gone off of ALA's definition of being able to find, evaluate, create, and communicate information digitally. But I wanted to talk a little bit about how digital literacy skills really depend on the digital media being used. And I was on the Great Websites, ALSC's Great Websites Committee. And I was chairing that when we made a switch from the Great Websites Committee to notable children's digital media. And so in that process, we had to figure out what did we mean by digital media if we were going to be evaluating digital media. Eventually, we decided that digital media that we would include would be real-time, dynamic, and interactive media content. But an ebook is technically digital media. It just doesn't require the same digital literacy skills as a website, which doesn't require exactly the same digital literacy skills as an app or other type. A YouTube video is digital media, but that's different skills than using an app. So we had a wide variety of digital media to go through and look at, and we decided to focus on basically being able to navigate that real-time, dynamic, and interactive content. And so I think that's a very important part of digital literacy. As far as libraries and what our library does, we basically have done different types of programming. We have done the tech skills that Ellen talked about with coding programs. We've done some pre-coding programs with computational thinking, which I think is important for getting younger kids ready to learn those technical skills. So they're learning what is an algorithm. They're learning, problem solving, and we're calling it debugging. And so those are important skills for beginning this digital literacy journey. We have also done kind of those social emotional programs. We did Who Wants to Be a YouTuber? And Melissa and I did that together. We did it for parents and kids. And so the kids brought their parents in because they all wanted YouTube channels. And we presented on how to use that safely. And then I think that we have also done more of the traditional digital literacy, the searching and finding information, because we do school visits. So when we do school visits, it's more of that traditional teaching the teachers and the students how to use our databases, how to search using our digital databases, how to find the correct information. And that's probably our most successful way of reaching students for that very traditional digital literacy knowledge skills.
That's great. Yeah, I think more libraries, hopefully with the pandemic easing off a little bit, can get back into public library, school library, going in and actually showing them the databases and teaching them, or at least having students come to the library or vice versa. Does anyone else have any ideas on how you look at digital literacy? Yeah, Marissa, go ahead.
I agree 100%. But I also think there's another component to how we can creatively intertwine what we're already doing with different technology tools. So some of the things that we've been doing, or I've been doing with the teens at the library, is creating a podcast is one. They were very excited about that, learning about those tools, researching what kind of microphones they need, and making them really in charge of it. So not only was it their idea, and I was like, okay, I purchased everything and handed it to them, I made them a part of the process of what kind of tools do you need to be able to get this done. So it's, because it's easy to go on Amazon and be like, oh, here's a podcasting kit, I'll purchase this. But what about that podcasting kit is important? Do you need that background? Probably not, because it's audio. What type of microphone, like I said. So I think that's really important too. So being creative with how we're integrating technology. Some of the other things we've done is Teen Book Tuesday. So we have social media accounts, we have a TikTok and an Instagram. And, how do you make a tutorial video that's only 30 seconds long that can go up on the Instagram? Or how do you make a Teen Book Tuesday elevator pitch about a book and throw that up there? And I have teens now who are graduating from high school who don't know how to actually even post on social media. So it seems like a very benign thing, but in a lot of ways, a lot of jobs nowadays incorporate social media. So it is key for them to have these fundamental understanding of how to just even download the app or open it or sign into it and post things. So I think that's also a big part of it as well. And, a lot of places too are incorporating social media as almost like a portfolio. So also kind of giving them the tools to be like, you do these amazing things, you do these volunteer things, you do these amazing projects, but on paper, it's kind of flat. So if you can also help them harness that and channel that into a visually engaging piece of media, that can also help them propel themselves forward as well, not only in school, but in careers as well. So that's another thing, that slyly trying to teach them things that they don't realize will later build into something more. So yeah, those are a couple things, you know, doing creative digital zines. So you're creating something and then they can post it on the social medias, and then it's, you know, getting out to all of the teens in the community, working with the clubs at the high school. What tech clubs do they have? Do they want to earn service hours that will also have them helping younger kids and teens and potentially even adults learning either coding or making apps or whatever it is that they are focusing on. So yeah, those are just some of the ideas, but yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there, that I think, like we said, there's so many layers to digital media, tech skills, that it's exciting because libraries have a chance to really push the boundaries of what that is in a way that I think schools can't, because they're constricted with the curriculum. So we have a chance to really think broadly about it. We can do bulletin boards with fake and real news articles and have little color stickers and have, like, for teens, passively let them decide which one's real and which one's fake, and then kind of get a base understanding of what your community and your library is at. You know, a lot of information I've gathered about where they're at is through passive programming of bulletin boards. They don't want to always interact with us as adult teens specifically. So having things where they can go and do it without like an adult seeing them, they get excited about it. They will engage with it. Yeah. So it's just trying to connect with them on the level they're at.
Marissa, I have such a good example of passive programming that is the wrong way to do it, as opposed to what you just described, which I think is the right way to do it. I have a story about, so like back when I first started, I put up this poster in the teen area that was like, being a good digital citizenship. It was about responsible social media habits. And I thought it was so helpful. I was like, I've done digital literacy. Like, I put up this poster that was like, don't cyberbully, like, do protect your identity. And then like I found out later from a former teen who's now a clerk at our library, and Alia, you know, Laura does not mince words. She told me that poster infuriated her. Direct quote from her, right? And I was like, how did I get this so wrong? Like, because it's been years since I put this poster up, right? And I was like, why did it have the exact opposite reaction than what I thought? And I think after talking to her, it was just like, it was like, maybe because it was like patronizing or preachy or cringy. And like, by the way, there's nothing wrong with those posters. Like, you should get the feedback from your teams before you're like, I gotta take all my posters down. But I think for me specifically, it was because that teen was probably like eye roll because we were doing like nothing else. And it was just like, wow, this like one-dimensional thing. And yeah, I just think that like maybe like instead of doing like prescriptive stuff, just like acknowledging that teens have their own rich experiences with navigating a digital world, like maybe not expertise like we just talked about, but certain forms of wisdom, you know, not always with formal searching skills or optimal research skills, but like perhaps in like cultural competence. And I think maybe where we can be of help is to work to help them develop further confidence, empowerment, and agency. And I think that a lot of the stuff that you both were talking about is like really great examples of that. And I'm like struggling to find another example, honestly.
I agree 100%, because the reality is they already have, whether it's in-depth knowledge, they have some understanding of, like we've talked about, being able to open the phone and get to social media, whether or not they know how to post on it or understand hashtags, but they have this fundamental understanding of, this is technology, I know how to get from point A to point B. So I think sometimes and I think it's because we're in this shift towards, we're all so used to it now, we need to start engaging them, like we said, like in a place where they're already at. So having things like, you know, the poster, they're like, oh well, yeah, I know, like, you know that already, you know what I mean? But we're like, yeah, we did a great job, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I am so like embarrassed at this point. Like the whole area has been completely redecorated and I'm like glad it's gone.
But that's the thing, is like you're tapping into what you already have. And I think that's what we need to do. It's like, go to the source. If your teens are telling you like, that's not working for us, you got to take it and be like, okay, yeah, I'm a little embarrassed, my pride's a little hurt, but you know what? You know what? Like, I'm going to be better the next time. And they're telling me like, that's not what we're into. Like, that's so last year, this is the direction that people are going in. Like, kind of follow that a little bit. Like like, you want to reach them, you got to kind of play the part with them a little bit too.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. There's actually, there is at least one study that I have read, probably more that I just haven't read yet, that they studied the social media habits of teens, and they found that the media active teens in their study, like the ones who do participate in social media and YouTube and like Twitch and all that stuff, had already, by the time that they were in the study, they had already acquired what we would call like risk prevention skills for digital media. So that's more like basic skills, like knowing like how to make my Instagram account private, how security measures work, and then like more complex ones like managing your relationships online and like knowing when to participate and when you need to quit. And even though if they know when they should, or when they like if they actually do it, that's a different thing. But yeah, that study was done in the EU, in Europe, and I think actually, Ellen, you might have cited it. It was Scolari in your presentation. So it isn't exactly apples to apples, but like the internet, it makes us have like a global culture. I hope that it means that as youth are growing up, they are absorbing from whatever educational environment that they're in, that there are risks to living a digital life. So yeah, that's my thought on that.
And I think somebody else mentioned this before, but it was about the YouTube, about having the parents come in too. And I think that's also key, because especially with certain like age demographic, and I don't mean that to be in like a belittling way, there's a divide between like the kids are living in it, whereas parents aren't necessarily, they're just hearing it, secondhand. So having them some kind of a cross promotional program where it's either like, this is the parent section, this is the teen or kid section, or together, I think is helpful. And I think it's also important for like keeping your data safe, or phishing emails and scams, and how social media safety works, those sorts of things. And so I think that like that can be done too. And some teens don't want to go to things with their parents, so if you have like a separate session for them, whatever it is, but having that option, I think is good, because I know schools try to do things, but sometimes they're limited with resources and time and all that kind of stuff. So if we can help assist in that, I think that's key. And also, I think we've talked about this too, but like reaching out to the schools, and if it's possible to meet with them once a year, twice a year, to see like where they know their holes or their deficiencies are, and what tools we have as librarians in a public setting that we can use to help fill that in. So whether it's like resources, so we have Sora, which is through Overdrive, and during COVID, we connected our ebook library to the school's ebook library. So then they had all this thousands of more books they had access to immediately. Or is it funding for bringing in authors, or if it's an expert in something, bringing them in, if we can tie, use cross funds to make that happen, those sorts of things. There's, so those are a couple ideas as far as like trying to help schools a little bit.
For sure.
There's lots of chatter going on in the chat.
This is great.
None of this was actually mentioned in the previous sessions, but people were saying, my colleague Andrea was saying that, knowing how to be safe online is certainly something that adults need to know too, especially since those who are the bad actors on the internet are so much more sophisticated now. Yeah, I mean, everyone can fall for things now that used to be, obvious for some of us, but now it's so hard to tell. So that's something that not only youth, but also adults need to know. Ellen, did you have anything you wanted to add to this? I know you've already kind of introduced a little bit of this in your keynote.
Yeah, I had a couple thoughts. One, I meant to mention the idea of parents and educating parents also, along with the children and teens. And I also think that you can't start this too young either. They've got the iPads in their hands at 1, 2, and 3. So, it's not going to be long, those stories of kids ordering stuff on Amazon when they got the iPad, so parents obviously need programs on how to protect their accounts from their kids. So, but also, I think that's some of what you were saying in terms of what the kids are doing and how they have experience. I think more than born digital, we need to think about experience. How much experience do they have on on these devices, in social media. Like you said, some kids don't have it and some kids do have it. So let's figure out where they are and how we can, particularly those missed populations, how are we going to let's advance the kids to doing podcasts, but let's make sure that the kids who have never gotten on social media also can do it. And let's look at their experience and their knowledge rather than their age. I think is the way to combat those born digital things. And we have a person posting in the Q&A. Do you think it's
just going to get to that? Yeah,
okay.
That's a great question. Go ahead, Ellen, you can answer it.
Okay, do you think it's too early to begin providing digital literacy programs on Web 3.0, aka blockchain? I don't think at all. I don't think providing literacy conveys advocacy. I think it's a matter of knowledge. It says, while the technology may have the potential to be, I'm going to read it out because actually I'm not sure everybody can see the Q&A. So do you think it's too early to begin providing digital literacy programs on Web 3.0, aka blockchain? Providing literacy could convey advocacy, and while the technology may have the potential to be innovative, it can be extremely harmful. Web 3.0 is disastrous for the environment, and most roadmaps include ideas, dystopian goals like storing medical records on the blockchain. Is it too dangerous right now? I think it's never too dangerous to learn about things. And I think you can do a program without being advocate. It can be, we don't want to infuriate them by saying, don't do this, but they hear about it. I mean, it's out there in the news. If it's out there in the news, we need to learn more about it. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think, I agree. I don't think there's any harm in learning about it. I think even if you had like a panel where you had different perspectives on it so that you get the information, but then you get the other sides of it as well is also key. So you could have the environmental impact perspective as well as understanding the knowledge, as well as how it could help whatever community or organization, like how that would actually benefit people. So giving the perspectives, and I think the one-sided bit of information is sometimes where it can get tricky. So if you can give the different perspectives, I think that could be really helpful.
It's a great idea. Yeah.
Because people are getting really wealthy. I mean, teenagers. I don't remember what the limit of the age is to do like Bitcoin, but you can make money using Bitcoin. It's dangerous, but but you can.
I had a parent recently tell me that they were like afraid of Bitcoin because you can go into so many places now, and it seems like it's like a video game. You can go into any kind of convenience store, give money, and then you have Bitcoin on this digital currency, and it's so intangible. It's easy for that to kind of get out of hand. So they were like nervous about what that means for the future, when to kids it could seem like money currency on roadblocks, but in real life it has a lot more impact. So yeah, there's a lot to think about moving forward with those sorts of topics for sure.
Yeah.
I also
oh, go ahead, Emma.
No, go ahead, continue. This is taking us in different directions, so go ahead.
Yeah, do you want us, I think we could probably address this in one of the questions coming up too.
Well, I just wanted to point out Andrea's comment that it feels like a rite of passage to fall for something stupid online, and that speaks to that experience thing. That the experienced person is going to check a couple places. We can still get fooled. Everybody can get fooled, but the basic things that you can check for come with experience. Looking at it over and over again. That's why I think thinking about experience and what you already know makes sense. Oh, and Sergio writes that the bottom fell out of the NFT market a few days ago. So
yeah, I think with the financial landscape right now, a lot of things are falling out, bottoming out. I'm going to go into the next question. I think if I can get my computer to work. It seems to have stopped. Uh-oh. Okay, let me just close that.
I'm pretty sure I have the questions up too on my computer. If you want me to copy and paste it into the chat.
No, I got it.
You got it? Okay.
Yeah. I had too many things open. What is the relationship between school and public libraries and teaching digital literacy for youth? And how can public libraries support the efforts of what's being taught in schools by librarians? And I do think you have already addressed this to a certain extent. So, I don't know if you have anything you wanted to add or anything you wanted to share.
Yeah, I didn't want to trample on this question, but I wanted to mention it in the what I talked about. But I think there's this important thing of how important information literacy is in the school libraries and how much we work on that at all levels, and how I think it can become siloed in students thinking that this is schoolwork and this is important for schoolwork, and then personal life is something different. And I think that's where working together, and some of the things I've mentioned, that I've heard you mention that you're doing, it is doing that, in that saying that no, this doesn't just apply for when I'm looking up information to do a paper, but when I'm looking up stuff about my own health, my own life, living in these arenas and being prepared to become professionals. I think that having it cross-taught or reinforced between the school and public libraries means that it becomes more integrated in their minds as to something important to be aware of all the time. Like, it's not just maybe on your school Google that you don't post something wildly inappropriate, but you don't do it in your regular social media either. That's not connected to the school, because it can be seen all over. And so I think that that's kind of what I wanted to make sure people understand, that how much time I think school librarians spend on this, and how important it is, and how important it is for it to not be siloed into school librarians in what they do, and carry it over from the school to the personal.
I do have a question to ask, which is not this question, but it has occurred to me during your discussion. So I'm going to bring it up now. I hope I won't derail everything. But of course, one of the themes that's been going across all of the days that we've been doing this is the theme of equity. And we know that, the governor mentioned that, every student was going to get a Chromebook. And I know that not every student actually got one, but even those who are getting devices through schools or other, having them lent out from libraries, that doesn't necessarily mean they A, know how to use them, or B, have the broadband capability. So how do you think we can reach out to those that A, are not coming to the library, that, you're not seeing? Because I think a lot of maybe the programs you're doing are with teens and youth who are, regular library users. I mean, even virtually, you probably are getting some, some new youth participants, but there's, I know, a whole segment of the population that you're still not reaching. Is there a way you can suggest to reach out to those folks?
I mean, oh, sorry, Marissa, were you going to say something?
No, go for it.
Okay. I think that we've reached a lot of people who consider themselves non-users by being active on social media with school clubs. Like, I know, Marissa, that you mentioned following tech clubs, which is absolutely a must, right? But even the cheerleading teams Instagram, the I don't know, the Korean American club, what was that?
I said a cappella groups.
Yeah, they will follow you back for the most part. Everyone's trying to get follows. And pay attention to how well those Instagram accounts are being run, how active they are, how good, dynamic their content is, their engagement. Because if you find those really active and dynamic accounts, you probably found the most digitally literate person in the school, whether it's a student or a teacher. And you can make a connection via those ones. It's just as likely as if you go through official channels, the official school social media. And they will probably be surprised to know that we do stuff that could help them. That's what my colleague Jasmine, who is a full-time teen librarian at the Cherry Hill Public Library, does now. I've learned a lot from watching her manage our social media accounts. She's an empress of social media. So that's just my observation of things that she does.
I think I agree 100%. Always go directly to your source if you can. That I think is the most key thing. But I think also working with any organizations in town, if you know of any organizations, especially if English is a second language, if there are any groups that work with recent migrants that come into the community, whatever it is, if you can connect with them and see if you can create some kind of a tech group for people who, English language is, tech group, those sorts of things. Because a lot of times the people that need this additional, help or learning, whatever it is, they're harder to actually, I don't want to say get their attention, but know that we're there for them, I guess is kind of what I'm saying. So if there's organizations that work with the people that aren't coming into the library or who could really benefit from these things, reach out to those organizations, see if there's something you can do with them, whether you come to the organization that specific building, or they come to you, whatever it is. I think that can be really helpful. And also having, if the library allows for it, having tech tools that can be checked out. So whether it's mobile internet kits or Chromecast and mobile hotspots, making that known in the communities that you're trying to reach. So it really is a whole, everything we do as librarians is a part, being in the community and making connections with people, but it's on so many levels with everything we're doing, and tech is a really big one, because if people don't have the tech to connect with us, they won't be able to know we're doing these things. So it's almost like through word of mouth, or flyers, maybe flyers, whatever it is, whatever will get to these communities as well.
That's
And
great.
I would just add, going back to the question too, that partnering with teachers, I mean, oftentimes as a public librarian, I feel like the best way to get to why large groups of children is through the teachers and through my relationships with teachers, because it is hard, especially as somebody who's serving younger populations, to reach out to people, where are the kids, reaching out to them where they are at school. And so developing those relationships with teachers and seeing what, instead of, as Ellen was saying, having these skills be kind of siloed into this is for school and this is not for school, is seeing how you can partner to make that more, this is for all times.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
We had a question come in the Q&A, and I think this is a good time to just ask it. Anonymous attendee said, what social media platforms do you consider being the most effective in connecting to patrons for digital literacy programs for digital born versus non-digital born?
Instagram,
TikTok.
yeah, TikTok, 100%.
WhatsApp is really good for.
Oh yeah, someone mentioned WhatsApp. Yeah, Cindy mentioned WhatsApp, and I thought that was a good suggestion.
And that is so interesting, because that came up repeatedly in the other two sessions for the other 2 days, because that is a tool that adults are, app that adults are using too, especially those whose English is maybe not their first language. And what came up in the other sessions was, don't just assume that they're gonna use whatever app that you're using. You have to find out what they are using. So yeah, that's good.
Discord is another one, especially.
I was gonna say, I have to mention Discord too.
It's a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think it's so interesting that because of Book Talk, books are being they're on the bestseller lists, and the books are old, they've been out for years, but because of the influence of that and younger people talking about them, they're creating such a demand for people to read them. So if you have an older collection and you want to get more people reading it, just have someone mention it on Book Talk. That is great. Does anyone else have anything else to add about this question? Otherwise, we can go on to.
I just wanted to second the suggestion to reach out to the teachers. Maybe provide programming for the teachers. They're not all within your, they don't all live within your town, but they could certainly, you're reaching who does live within your town through the teachers. And I think that's a great idea. I also wanted to bring up this idea, and maybe somebody from the audience who's more or somebody who's more in school. In the schools, computer science, there's this new computer science group that's working within schools. Sharon, I know you've seen the things come through. Kind of, there's a separation between the technical and the cognitive in school. And a lot of school librarians would prefer to have the technical parts done by the computer science people and focus on the cognitive part. So by teaming with your school librarians, you're also helping them with where they don't have time to do all of the technical part. So, you know, if you are teaming with them and see what their students need, or with the teachers, talking to the teachers, that, you know, that divide can be helping them. So you're supporting school librarians where, you know, they may or may not have good computer science, or they may be responsible. In some schools, school librarians are responsible for computer science also, and in some there's the separation. So it's really interesting how the different places that you are can affect what you are doing. So I just want to bring that up.
It's very interesting because it just reminded me, I'm no longer working in a public library, but we had IT folks when I was working in a public library, and they basically, they just fixed the computers and they sort of troubleshooted. They never taught a class, and they could have, they had the technical skills to do it, and then the librarians could have done the whole, cognitive part of it. So yeah, I think there's certainly a way to get more staff involved in teaching this.
I think another thing too, again, going back to the teens, is like, if you do have teens, like Melissa had mentioned, ones that are like, are super tech savvy, see if they'll make a tutorial, like a very simple, easy tutorial video for you to have on your website, have on your social media, to send to the teachers, because sometimes they'll listen to a peer more than they'll listen to, us or an adult. So if you can, again, harness your teens to do something like that, that can also be really helpful as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let me see if we can go on to the next one. There's, every time I do this, oh, here we go. Next question is, does your library incorporate digital literacy into your summer reading program? And I'm always invested in knowing this. If not, can you offer suggestions on how your library can do that? And of course, I said summer reading, but I think really, if you have a winter program, if you just have a kind of a regular reading program throughout the year, like the 1,000 Books for Kindergarten or any of those literacy programs, this really, applies to that as well.
Yes, actually, we do have some at CHPL. We have some digital literacy. Well, I'll just show. Can I share my screen? Absolutely. I'll show you what I mean. Okay, you cannot screen share. Oh, so I have to wait for you to stop sharing.
Oh, sorry.
I can share. Yeah, it gave me like a little share. It gave me a little like, no, you can't do it message. So we use Read Squared, and on Read Squared, you can create these missions. So this is our current homepage for, it's not live yet. Like, we have our 2022 Oceans of Possibilities. Oh my gosh, I'm like, my blood pressure is getting higher just thinking about summer reading. Even though we've been working on it for so long. Yeah. We have the banner up, but these missions are actually from last year. We still, or I don't know, Alia, your missions, are your missions right already, or?
Yes, my missions, the early literacy mission is from.
Well, I'm doing the teen missions, and mine are left over from last year. I have to change them, but they're going to be pretty much the same. Okay, so we have this one mission that is follow us on our social media platforms listed below. So if you click on it, I think it will tell you like, all right, so navigate to, follow our newsletter, navigate to our YouTube channel and follow us there. Follow us on Instagram, see you on the Discord. So all these things are just inviting them to participate with us in interactive digital media settings. And the virtual scavenger hunt, I think, yes, test your search skills. And this was definitely intended to help people with navigating our website, but you could definitely switch this up to help with navigating all kinds of online settings. So here's find Miss Jasmine in one of our yearbooks on the website, find an online newspaper, discover an anti-racism resource, where's Miss Melissa? Can you find my profile? Find a YA book list. So I think try an online learn, and then I think some of these are adult ones, right? These two here, try an online learning tool. So here, these are some ways that we have tried to incorporate that kind of stuff. I don't know. What about you guys, or what do you guys think of all that?
And I'm going to jump in since it's the same program. For the early literacy, we definitely also are able to say, like, sing a song with your baby. And then here's the YouTube video with a link to the song. And you're able to, with Read Squared, at least you're able to embed that, or do an animal craft and then link to samples of animal crafts. I really like, what I really like about Read Square's missions is that you are able to embed hyperlinks, you're able to embed videos in the missions. And so for early literacy, that's really great, because our early literacy mission is just basically early literacy activities to do a young child and a parent together.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll stop sharing now unless anyone has any other questions about this.
Could you incorporate something like the fact checker thing in there, where they have to go in and fact check an article or something?
Oh, I think I might actually add that since I'm still working on it. I think that's so cool. Yeah.
We do something very similar. We used Beanstack starting in, once COVID hit, and we do very similar things, like having the searches, those activities, as well as, again, having them submit any kind of social media content that we could also cross promote about summer reading. It could be them doing, I think it was during COVID, I think it was like, that was colors. I don't remember what the theme was, but there was some kind of a activity where they were doing something creative and they filmed themselves drawing some beautiful picture, and that counted as like a badge that they could get. And again, not pushing, but having some of those other digital literacy skills of using other tech equipment as well. We did that. And then also we kind of incorporated our team volunteering in, mostly during COVID again. Since COVID, we've had to kind of take it out because it doesn't necessarily follow the school volunteering guidelines. But during COVID, we did, and there was a lot of different either tech or things they could do in a community separated from people, dropping something off at a neighbor's house, whatever it was, that we did through Beanstack. And then at the end of the summer, regardless if they signed up for the volunteer aspect or not, they all got like, you completed summer volunteering for X amount of hours, depending on how many badges they had completed. So doing the hybrid. And we've also found that the teens respond more and sign up. We have higher numbers of sign up when the teens are doing it virtually versus in person, again, because they don't have to interact with anybody unless they come in to get prizes. So that has been really helpful for us in understanding how to better actually reach our teen community is using, something like Beanstack, or I believe is it Foursquare? Did I make that up?
Read
Square.
Foursquare, I think is that game you play.
It's that old, yeah.
Yeah, and I agree. And even if you're not using one of those platforms, you can certainly use Google Forms or some other, free forum in order to kind of do a little more interactive, activities for summer reading. And Nicole in the chat said hybrid programming is a great way to engage patrons and build their digital literacy skills. Yeah, I mean, I love the idea of scavenger hunts and all that kind of stuff. And I think adults do too. So I know we're talking for youth here, but adults sometimes love it just as much, especially if you're all do like multi-generational programming where they can all do it together.
Or escape room. That's another really popular one, virtual escape rooms. Those are always fun, using Google Forms and Sheets, and yeah.
We did those during COVID, and they were like everybody's favorite program.
Right?
The kids loved it, and they were like, how can I get more?
Yep.
They were super popular.
I think part of it is you have to kind of, the teens are the ones who know what's popular. So you have to kind of, make sure that they give you the input about what you should do in the summer, because one thing one year is not going to be popular the next year. I have to definitely keep up with all the trends of what they're interested in. I'm going to ask, well, we have another question. And how are we doing on time? We're doing fine on time. We have another like 15 minutes. And this is and I'm not going to share my screen because I'll just say it. And you've all been answering it anyway, really. But what did libraries do well during the pandemic to encourage digital literacy skills in youth or for youth? And what areas do you think there could be room for improvement?
Well, maybe this is a good time to break out that PowerPoint presentation that I made.
I've been waiting for it.
Okay. So, well, because mainly what we did, and what I think we did successfully was reach out to teens in virtual spaces. And here, can I still share my screen? I think I can. I think it's still my turn to do that.
It is.
Okay, so I prepared this whole, I really wanted to talk about transmedia literacy. It's specifically because, it's like Ellen said, there's a lot of definitions of digital literacy, and not all of them are immediately obvious as to what they are. But transmedia literacy is specifically the competencies that relate to content production for for sharing and consumption among a wide digital audience. So what does that mean? Here are some, you'll recognize these familiar digital interactive media creation sites, right? We got YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok. Video gaming is absolutely part of this universe. And I'm curious, does anyone know what this red circle with the squiggles in it is? If you do, you can put it in the chat.
I don't. But I'm looking at the chat. I'll be keeping somebody gets a prize who knows that.
It's no, I'll just say it's it's the symbol or the logo for Archive of Our Own, which is probably the most active repository of online fan works. So fan fiction, fan art is usually shared on Twitter, but that fan works and fan spaces also are, again, part of this universe. So it really emphasizes the shift between traditional media literacy, I guess, if you want to call it that, where it's the user, the media, and the interaction between the two, and accounts for the fact that the user and the media are embedded in this participatory culture, right? Where they're also using informal learning strategies to navigate these cultures, and it's having a pretty big impact on the modern education of both teens and kids, because we might think of teens when we think of these spaces, but like Alia and I found out, lots of kids want to be YouTubers, lots of kids want to be Twitch streamers, right? So yeah, for example, if a child or teen edits a video and uploads it to YouTube, this represents a set of digital practices, but also requires and provides evidence for a set of digital skills. So this researcher, Scolari, he put together a taxonomy, a really prototypical taxonomy that I think is open to interpretation. And I have 2 slides because there's a lot of skills, because there's so much that is encompassed by this realm of literacy. And you can already see, and that it's production, individual management, all the things that are under production is skills related to audio and editing software, coding, creating cosplay and costumes, taking pictures of those cosplays and costumes, managing your content, archiving your content. And the reason that I included all of these, so I'm not going to go through each and every one of them, but it's just that in each of these spaces, libraries have an opportunity to teach towards these skills and know that we are doing something for digital literacy for teens and youth. So these slides will be available later. I'm not going to go through everything, but I did want to talk about how libraries can support transmedia literacy for teens. And I'm certainly not an expert, but I was well, the first thing that I think we did was provide an outlet for youth created interactive digital media content. And we entered the media space ourselves. So meet them where they are. And then also Marissa and I have both been talking about how we created opportunities for teens to contribute to the library's interactive media content. Our tab creates content for our Instagram account. And they can create content for our newsletter and sometimes our website. And if you have any other ideas, you can put them in the chat. One thing that we did during the pandemic was we started a Discord server. Here's our Discord server. You can see we have many text channels. I can't show you the whole server because people's names are in it, And I don't want to like, do like a privacy infringement thing. But here you can see we have a creative work channel. And this is where people send in there, and we have somebody who sent us one of their YouTube videos, and he got a chance to like put it in front of an audience. So that was cool. And then what's this? Oh, this is someone's fan art of their D&D characters. And, they had to do a lot of work. They in like, art and editing software and stuff, and they got a chance to share it with us. Another cool thing we did was recently had a surprise PowerPoint night, which you may have seen them maybe on social media, where like you get dealt a surprise PowerPoint that somebody has made in advance, and you have to present it sight unseen. I think there's also a Jackbox game that is similar to it. And so this first round, we made the slides and the PowerPoints for them, but they were so into it and they want to make the PowerPoints on their own next time. So next time they're going to, they'll have to submit their topic to us when they register, and then they're going to create their PowerPoint. They have to send it to us. Actually, I think we're gonna have them do it on Google Slides or maybe Canva, because it has to be like a web friendly app. And that's gonna, help them with, well, hopefully it will help them with all the production skills that, that I mentioned before. And also be extremely hilarious and chaotic. So yeah.
Well, I want to say there is a question in the Q&A regarding that. So when you all finish, I want to make sure you answer that. And I just wanted to also chime in to say, a lot of PowerPoints that adult librarians or just older librarians are like me that do are boring. So I wish all the teens could just take my ideas and make the PowerPoints. I think that'd be a whole lot more interesting.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's the end. I just.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to chime in?
Let me catch up on the chat too.
I think some of the stuff that we did that was really helpful during COVID was we work a lot with our the public schools in our community. We're very fortunate enough. So especially in the early days, just like everybody else, we flipped all of our programs to be in a digital environment very quickly within 24 hours. So everything kind of continued. And I think it was really important for the kids and the teens to have that sense of normalcy. So all of our book groups became virtual, and we actually went into the elementary schools and the middle schools and did virtual book groups with the librarians there, especially in the early days when they were still figuring out how to navigate this new environment and how they were going to be teaching. We would go in and we would give book recommendations for digital books in our ebook collection, those sorts of things, as well as what was in the school's ebook collections, just to stay connected and to help again with that sense of normalcy. And then through our social media channels, we did Day in the Life. So one of our teen advisory board members would, each take a turn each week, and they would do the day in the life of, a teen during lockdown. And it would be their perspective of where they were doing homework that day, what they were doing, walking, whatever it was they were doing throughout their day, to again, kind of connect with the community of teens in our town, so that it wasn't so isolating and so alone, because we were all feeling very similar things, but we were also separate. So a lot of the things we did was to be like, we're still here. We're here for you. We can still connect in this space. And we did, the virtual story times, virtual songs and rhymes. We're still doing those things. But, we've had parents who are like, we still use those. It's such a great way to have, even during the week or on the weekends or whatever, instead of putting, Coco Melon on or whatever, it could be your local librarian. It's like, oh, Miss Martha, I recognize her when you come into the library. So it's, again, connecting in the virtual setting that can tie back again into the library itself.
Yes, exactly. And it sounds like for all of you that a hybrid, aspect of programming is not going away. You're still going to continue to do a lot of digital programming, as well as trying to get the kids back in the library too.
I think a benefit of the hybrid is that we are able to reach more people, just naturally. You know, we always had issues with parents who couldn't make it to certain story times at certain times of the day because of work or whatever, but having these virtual story times with songs and books allows them to do it with their kids at home at their own pace. So it's not the full experience, but at least it's something, you know, they're still getting that early literacy and the repetition and, you know, all of that in a, you know, comfortable environment at home.
Yeah, that's great. I'm going to just go to the Q&A just because I want to make sure not to forget. The anonymous attendee asked, do you have any thoughts on Google Slides being used as a digital literacy platform? We've seen this being used a lot among librarians, embedded into a website as a substitute for a website.
Meaning they'll say like, you'll go to their website and then you'll see like, learn about this subject, click here, and it's Google Slides.
I think so, but the requester or the attendee may want to like add into Q&A a little more or into chat. Yeah, I think
there are, go ahead.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like using like Padlet, you know, where, you know, you can just add all the links to it and then it finds, you know, nothing but a whole list of, which we're using for this too. Don't forget, I did put the link in earlier, and I've shared just a few things to it, but you know, I sort of hope other people will do that as well.
I think,
oh, and Sergio says, I've seen this basically, you can have a button on a slide link to another slide. It acts like a acts like a hyperlink. You did warn us about your dog.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a
yeah.
it was in a few webinars that Sergio attended. And Ellen, for you, is this something that takes you away from, because you said you don't like hyperlinks so much?
You know, I don't like hyperlinks, but, you know, I think that's my thing to overcome. And I don't think it takes away. I think I need to get my brain organized to follow hyperlinks. And it's just harder for me, but I don't see a problem with hyperlinking out to many different kinds of media, Google Slides or Padlet or, you know, any other kind of media. You don't have to stay within just because you're embedded in a website. I think that introducing different kinds of media through that website gives it one connecting place to come back to, but you're using the best tool for your for your information, you know, so I don't see a problem with it. You know, Google Slides, Google has other issues in terms of, you know, who owns the content and the privacy and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I know.
Somebody official looking, of course.
I know.
But yeah, so I don't think it's a problem. Other
yeah, and Sergio says they're taught as choose your own adventure games,
oh,
which is true, right? It's the online version of the
okay.
Or coding games too, where you can kind of have different outcomes. Yeah, sorry, Marissa, I interrupted you.
It's all good. It's all good. We use Google Sites, and then we link a lot to the other Google either slides or to set, what is it? The
Jamboards you can use.
Yeah, like you can connect, which is really, really wonderful thing about Google is it's so you know, the connectivity of it. So we call them landing pages for our middle school book group and then for our teen advisory board. And we have everything from all of the passwords for all of our social media accounts on there. And it's only for those teens to signing in so they get their volunteer hours. But it's all done through Google. And again, it's been really wonderful having that one place that you can do so many different things on it, and we're pretty much in control of it. We can change the colors, all of that stuff, and you don't need any additional expenses or IT or anything. It's very much you can do it on your own and make it what you need it to be.
Yeah.
I think just to bring it back to the question, this is what libraries did really well during the pandemic, was curating digital media that and sharing that with our communities. And I think like we created a digital media page basically for the pandemic for children and families. And I mean, all the stuff Melissa was saying that they did with the teens. We definitely did a great job of having a curated list of all of what was being offered, because it's definitely at the beginning, so much was being offered, and this author was doing a digital story time, and this website offered, you know, people reading books to kids, and Mo Willems is drawing with kids here. But so bringing that all together was something that I think libraries were very successful at.
Mm-hmm. It's true. Yeah, it was a little overwhelming at the beginning with just everybody just throwing stuff out that they were doing. And it's interesting you mentioned that now, because this has come up in the other 2 days too, where other library, I mean, it came up in the adult literacy session where people were saying, you know, we need to have somewhere, and I don't even know how this would be possible, for libraries to sort of say what type of like literacy training they're doing with adults. So that if there's an adult in one community who may be able to benefit from it, especially if it's online, they could go there, you know, and because so much of what we're doing is just only within our own libraries, or, you know, you have to go to every library's Facebook page to figure it out. There has to be some way to kind of, I don't know, collate all this stuff so there's more sharing, more knowledge of what's happening in all the libraries. And another thing that came up, which you've also kind of mentioned in the disinformation or the kind of financial literacy, they talked about how so many of the adult financial literacy programming has to do with like investing and saving. But what if you don't have any of that? They, you know, a lot of even teens too, or new adults, they just want to know how to use a credit card properly, or, you know, it's not, some of the digital literacy tech, training doesn't have to be, you know, on financial literacy. It can be in other aspects of it. So we have to be cognizant of, you know, what degree that we're offering these type of programs for, you know, because a lot of teens don't have any money yet, so they don't need to invest, but they need to not be inundated with free credit card offers that they tend to get, you know, when they're reached like 18.
I saw an article recently about issues with, you know, there's so many apps like Shein and ASOS or whatever for like fast fashion, and right on when you're checking out, there's like, you know, if you do $4.99 for the next, you know, whatever 6 months, it'll be paid off. And again, this non-tangible thing where it makes it like, oh, this is so easy, but they don't understand that there's the interest that goes along with that, and, you know, whatever else, and then all of a sudden they're already in trouble. So having that information, especially for apps that are being directed towards teens or, you know, young adults, without that fundamental information, it could be pretty bad. So,
right. Yeah. I'm sort of looking in the chat and just want to make sure I'm not missing any questions, comments. Sergio said that they're doing HTML linking 2 pages together and taking it from there, themed around Batman, which I think is great. Anything with superheroes is popular. Or Spider-Man, I have to say. Choose your favorite Marvel or DC characters. Doctor Strange, it's my current favorite. So
I missed, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I missed that sort of last, I don't know, good 5-7 minutes of what
it was
we were.
The question about using PowerPoints.
We were still talking about,
websites.
okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
There was a discussion on that. Hopefully your person wasn't too official, like you didn't get ticketed for anything.
That's what I was worried about. I was like, oh no, did our sewer line overflow again? And someone was here to tell us that it's, yeah, so sorry, it was nothing, no emergency.
Oh, good. I don't have any more questions, but you know, we have a little time if people want to ask any questions that you haven't asked, whether it's
Sharon, Nicole raised her hand.
Oh, sorry. Yes, Nicole. Can you type in the chat? We haven't really been unmuting people only because it's more cumbersome. So if you can if you can put anything in the chat or in the Q&A. Oh, yeah, okay. That's what's been happening for the last couple of days. People's like, they move their cursor and it raises your hand. Okay. And it's good to see you, Mimi. Mimi has been so great in all of this. I think that the Digital Literacy Forum, it's her brainchild. She and the state librarian kind of came up with this, and then she got the rest of us in our department to do it. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, you're welcome, Sharon.
To be here.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to share my thoughts on how wonderful today's session has been. I mean, I'm seeing this wonderful camaraderie coming in, and the discussions just flow naturally. The combination of the academic discussion plus, the practitioner's side of things. And I always tell Sharon, the youth services librarians are my favorite. They are as serious as anybody can, but they know how to laugh. They are tech savvy, fashion savvy. Melissa, I'm looking at you, dye their hair. I mean, everything. I mean, I just love you guys. And also, of course, my love for Sharon. Sharon, my colleague at the State Library, the Librarian of the Year 2019, OMG. So congratulations, Sharon. So thank you so much.
I have no makeup on, no blush on. Thank you,
Yeah.
Mimi. That's so sweet. Well, this has been so much fun, I have to say. It's wonderful. And having such great panelists who are so knowledgeable and doing so much in your libraries really makes all the difference. And I think we have another question in Q&A. Okay, it sounds like the focus of the discussion has been on younger digital born patrons. Do you have any thoughts on how to provide digital literacy programs differently for older, non-digital born patrons? And I know that there was some discussion on this on the first day, on your day, Mimi, but maybe you can answer that if you'd like.
Maybe we can think too about, non-digital born patrons include perhaps ELL students who are coming from countries who don't have a lot of connections, in addition to those, people who may not have the devices and stuff that from our own areas, areas that are not connected. But there are, certainly significant people who have never been to a library, who have never, are not literate or not, and certainly not literate in English. And how do you become digitally involved if you're not in English? So
and there was some mention of making sure that things are in other languages. We definitely have to reach out to community members. I don't, there was no answer on how that would happen, but we have so many universities and colleges that I would hope that there could be some people that would be able to translate information to help those who are non-digitally born for this.
Yeah, and also at the key is that you actually have to make that engagement happen, especially with people who are coming from the marginalized groups and older adults as well. And this keeps occurring to us as we provide the digital literacy services, is that this really has to be tailored for people's needs. So I think that engagement piece is really important. So, yeah.
Right, and maybe surveying your own community on what they need and making sure that the survey is in multiple languages, reaching out to those in the community who work with people who are, recently come. I mean, I assume that eventually we'll have more people from Ukraine, more people, we already have a population from Afghanistan in New Jersey. So I certainly hope people have been reaching out to them, to see what they need. I know they have, but I don't know how the libraries necessarily have been doing it in every community. I know some communities have. Darby has a question, which you may already be seeing this, Ellen. And she says it may be more for a question for you on strategies for bringing this focus on digital literacy to your colleagues or school faculty. She's found that her colleagues in schools are so resistant to the extra work required for getting students to really do the appropriate back end work. Understandable because classroom teachers are so overwhelmed, but it was a real roadblock for her.
Yeah, it's interesting. There was, some discussion in the College of Education how a lot of the early childhood people were not really on board with kind of the digital stuff, that they weren't really thinking about. And I'm curious what levels this may be happening. Darby might have been seeing happening. But one thing that going online for more than a year with schools has done is really highlighted the importance of digital literacy for all ages. And yeah, it is kind of tough because teachers have so much on their plate now. And it's one of the reasons why we should have school librarians, so that school librarians can collaborate with those teachers and do some of that back end work. Although some of it is converting to, including digital formats and digital outcomes, like having a student create a turn something in something other than just a paper. A research paper may not always be the best way to assess knowledge, which is what a paper is doing. So, and you can do that from the very youngest. So I think actually some of this extra work has been done by the pandemic for us. We need to hold on to that as I was thinking about with talking about continuing to have hybrid programs and stuff, because you do bring in things. We're talking about this with meetings. Just the fact that this digital literacy event has been all online, I think has reached very many people who couldn't get out of their offices and couldn't have attended a thing. You are missing some things, but I think that, one of the struggles we're going to have to work with going forward is how do we incorporate the best of what we've learned and the best of our old ways of doing things. And it's a real struggle because it's not easy to do. But I think that to Darby's question too, is that reaching out to teachers and making programs available to teachers, you're not only helping them with some of their back end work and learning, but also, if you CEUs, I think are much easier to issue now. So continuing education units. And so you could be providing them with work, you could be making a connection. And, so this working between public libraries and school libraries could be beneficial to making it work for everybody. So I hope that answers your question, Darby. If you have additional points, you can put them in the chat.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think, the fact that so many webinars and programs and things are recorded and that, people can watch them at their leisure is just so important. And, I think we're all trying to share any kind of programming that we see that's free, especially, with others, just because there are so many other states out there that are doing great or providing great CE and professional development opportunities. So just continuing to find things and share them with each other is really important. I don't see any more questions in the Q&A.
I have one more resource to share.
Okay.
Speaking of great things that are recorded out there, I don't know how I came across this, but there was a talk by the director and program director of the News Literacy Project, which we have mentioned already. I'll put it in the Padlet. It's called, Is It Legit? Teaching Digital Verification for News Literacy Learning. This might be a presentation that they've done at other places too, but I found it on the Rutgers ComInfo YouTube page, which has like 600 subscribers only. And since we didn't get a ton of time to talk about misinformation, there's so much to talk about, but that is definitely like the whole thing. I watched this and I thought it was so interesting. It's like using visual literacy to verify the accuracy of images.
I saw it too. It is amazing. Yeah. It is so scary to think how the dark web is like so much stuff can be. Yeah. And that, did they have, is that the one where Nancy Pelosi they mentioned her, with the video that, I can't remember if that was actually the same one or they just mentioned her.
They did one where it was like, oh, look at Joe Biden not standing for the flag, but it was like, he was just at like a cultural event and was just trying to get out of the way of like the cultural dancers behind him and like just learning how to like be critical when you like look at that stuff. But something specifically that I wanted to share from it is the Internet Minute, which you maybe have heard of before. But here I'll share since I already have screen sharing. But Yeah, I mean, it is
Oh.
basically what is transmitted in a single minute worldwide, right? 3.6 million YouTube videos watched, 16.2 million texts sent, 5.9 million Google searches. And yeah, it's just like how complicated the internet world is. And then just like, I think they said, like, think about your own information habits from like just today or yesterday. And then imagine that you're like also a young person trying to navigate this. And I think there's like a really good quote, and I can't remember where it came from, but like becoming literate, I think it goes, becoming literate in a networked age is hard work, regardless of how old you are, regardless of age. So like we're all trying to just get by in this crazy world. So like I think we should help each other out and stuff. So I just wanted to make sure, because I saved that to share. So I just wanted to make sure to get it in there before we finished.
I think that's a great thing to end.
Oh, great.
End this on. I mean, it is kind of, it's amazing.
Isn't it overwhelming? I'm just
It
like,
is.
oh my God, I want to take a nap.
Yeah, I almost didn't want to start on misinformation and disinformation because that's a whole nother.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I think that's a whole nother thing too. It's a really important part of digital literacy, and it's becoming more important every day, which is why I wanted to mention that site. But I it really is important, and if you can do programs on that, I think it's so important. That visual literacy is as so much of what we're consuming on the internet is so visual. It's really important to teach visual literacy. And the other thing we haven't really mentioned, which I think is important, is diversity on the web and being aware of things like, who was it that did a video that when you search for Black women or something, you get all these porn sites or something. There's like the algorithms really are awful when it comes to certain search terms. And so we need to think about how to make sure that when we create digital literacy presentations, they include diversity, and thus not using the term digital native, and also trying to make sure that you take into consideration the way different people approach things differently. How there's what they call Black Twitter and Asian Twitter, and that there's different places for people to be, and the dangers of for people on the web. That's one of the reasons why Elon Musk buying Twitter has scared so many people that it become much more toxic. So there's a lot there. But Sharon, before you share my slides, I have to ask you to do one thing. So just before we end.
Okay. No, I'm not sharing. I can share
said you
anything until we're ready.
Okay.
It's going to take a little while to upload everything.
Okay.
Sorry. It's not that instantaneous yet.
Okay.
But I did want to sort of ask if anyone had any final things to say. This is the panelists. You or Andrea or Mimi or Michelle, my boss is here. Michelle Stricker is actually here.
I just wanted to say one thing, that yesterday and Tuesday, when we were talking, I think more about adults, and I felt like some of the conversation, the stakes feel so high because you're talking about people acquiring skills so that they can get jobs, so that they can pay bills, and that one of the things we talked about is how do you bring people in to talk about digital literacy and have them walk through the door. And this entire conversation has really reminded me of the full scope of what it means to be digitally literate, and that sometimes we lose sight of, and I don't say leisure lightly, but how important it is for us as to interact with each other. And so much of our culture is being content creators and sharing and developing relationships, and how what we do online is so tied to that. And so that sometimes maybe when we're focused on these like critical aspects of technology, we forget that a lot of times these other things are ways that pull people in and give them confidence and bring them in to learn the skills that then they can apply to different platforms that might help them in other aspects of their life. So you just gave me so much food for thought. And I think that this is such a crucial part of this entire conversation. So I really thank you. And I really mean it with, you guys are so on point with everything that you shared and your examples. I'm really blown away. And so thank you just so much for bringing your expertise today. And I'm sure that many of the attendees will say how valuable this was, but it was especially valuable for me. So thank you so much.
She's got a little one that's going to be a digital expertise in about, a year. And she's, Penny's only like, what, 4 or 5?
Yes. And, the discussion about wanting to be on YouTube, she told me she wants to make videos. I was trying to block that out, like keeping that from her, but the videos where kids are just showing their toys, I mean, she loves that.
Yeah.
I don't think that you
Toy
can
talk.
keep kids
Yep.
from these things. So
My daughter is 6, so I've been through all of it. Yeah.
I want to say that I have a 11-year-old, and just what Ellen was talking about, like, I feel like that they're very good at knowing the dangers of like saying your address online or showing your face. She's always like, I'll make a video, but I won't show my face. But then the disinformation stuff, they're not, they don't have those skills.
Yeah, that critical consumer of information. That's what we need to be working towards creating.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Right. Well, I think we have a lot of great ideas to do that going forward. Yes. Yeah, and Sergio started creating content online when he was 14. It was a minefield even then.
Me too, Sergio. Can you believe we did that? Like, what was I had an online diary. It was telling the world everything about like my high school drama and crushes. I'm like, what?
Yeah. We will prevail, and we will make sure everybody's as safe as they can be online.
That's the goal. That's the goal.
Yeah. Well, I just want to thank all of you so much for your wonderful discussion, your input, your slides, sharing your time. I know, Ellen, with teaching, you have so much other things to do. So thank you so much for being the keynote. And I want to thank the rest of my department for coming and supporting each other. It's really been so great. So
thank you for the
all.
opportunity, Sharon. This
Yes,
was
thank you.
really
Thank
fun.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I don't know if you noticed in the chat, I did put a link to the evaluation form. There's always an evaluation form at the end. So please feel free to fill that out. You'll also get it when you get an email from Zoom. Andrea's taking care of that.
yeah,
So
it'll
thank
pop
you.
up when you log out, and then you just have to click on the link.
They always pop out and up, and you're like, I'm just going to ignore it. So thank you all. Thank you all of you for attending. This has been great. And I guess we can.
Thank you.